stop. Don't scroll. Just pause for a second and breathe. Because if this message reached you on date, it's not random. Out of millions of people scrolling right now, somehow this found you. Think about that. You didn't search for this. You didn't plan to be here. But here you are. And deep down, you already feel it. Because something is happening in your life right now. Something you can't fully explain. Maybe it started quietly. A strange feeling you couldn't name. A shift you couldn't describe. And now, you feel disconnected from people you once related to. Conversations that used to matter now feel forced. Things that once excited you feel empty, meaningless. Even your thoughts have changed. They're deeper now, heavier. Almost like your mind is trying to show you something, but you can't fully see it yet. And the strangest part? You can't talk about it. Not because you don't want to, but because no one seems to understand. So you stay silent. You observe, you overthink, you question everything, even yourself. Why am I feeling this way? Is something wrong with me? Am I just overthinking everything? Or worse, am I losing my mind? Listen carefully. No, you're not. You're not broken. You're not confused. And you're definitely not going crazy. What you're feeling right now is real. It's a shift. Something inside you is changing, evolving, waking up. And most people never reach this point, but you did. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what this change means. So don't leave, because this might be the message you didn't know you needed, but were meant to hear. You've started noticing things others don't even see. Not because you're trying to be different, but because you can't ignore it anymore. The way people talk, the way they react, the way everything feels so surface level. Fake conversations, forced smiles, empty routines repeated day after day. And suddenly, it hits you. It all feels scripted, like everyone around you is following an invisible script. Saying what they're supposed to say, doing what they're expected to do, living a life they never stop to question. And you don't fit into that anymore. It's like you've stepped out of a movie that everyone else is still acting in. You look around and think, wait, is nobody else seeing this? But they're not. Or maybe they don't want to. And that's where the distance begins. Not because you hate people, not because you want to isolate yourself, but because something inside you refuses to pretend anymore. You can't fake interest in things that don't matter to you. You can't laugh at things that don't feel real. You can't keep playing a role you've already outgrown. So, slowly, quietly, you start pulling back. You speak less, you observe more, you question everything, and people notice it. They might say, "You've changed. You're acting different. You're too serious now." But what they don't understand is, you didn't change overnight. You just stopped ignoring what was always there. And here's the part that no one prepares you for. The more aware you become, the more alone you start to feel. Because awareness creates distance. You begin to realize that not everyone is on the same level of understanding. Not everyone is asking the same questions you are. Not everyone is ready to see what you're starting to see. And that realization, it's heavy. It makes you feel like you don't belong anywhere. Like you're stuck between two worlds. The old version of your life and the new version you don't fully understand yet. You try to go back to how things were, but it doesn't feel right anymore. You try to move forward, but you don't know where you're going. So you end up in this strange space where everything feels uncertain, where you're surrounded by people, yet still feel alone. And that loneliness, it's not just physical, it's mental, it's emotional, it's deep. But listen carefully. This is the moment where most people misunderstand what's happening. They think something is wrong with them. They think they're becoming distant, cold, or disconnected. But that's not the truth. This disconnection you're feeling is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. It's the first stage of something powerful. And if you don't run from it, if you stay with it, understand it, and go deeper, you'll realize this isn't the end of who you are. It's the beginning of who you're becoming. Let me ask you something, and I want you to answer this honestly, not quickly. Have you ever felt like you've outgrown your own life? Not your job, not your city, not even the people around you, but your entire life, as it is right now. Same place, same people, same routine. Nothing has changed on the outside, but inside, everything feels different. The things that once felt normal now feel strange. The things that once made sense now feel questionable. The life you were living on autopilot suddenly feels intentional, like you're finally seeing it for what it is. Pause for a second. Really sit with that feeling, because this part is important. Most people ignore this moment. They distract themselves. They scroll. They go back to their routine, pretending nothing happened. But you didn't. You felt it, and once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. That quiet discomfort, that inner voice whispering, "This isn't it." That's not negativity. That's not confusion. That's awareness. And awareness is dangerous because it breaks illusions. It forces you to question things you once accepted without thinking. It makes you realize, maybe this isn't the life I truly want. Maybe I've been following a path that was never mine. Maybe I've been living on default, not by choice. And that realization, it shakes you. Because now you're standing at a point where you can't go back, but you don't fully know how to move forward either. That's why it feels uncomfortable. That's why it feels uncertain. But listen carefully. That feeling right there is not a mistake. It's not a glitch in your mind. It's a signal, a wake-up call. You're not losing direction. You're gaining clarity. You're not falling apart. You're breaking out. And most importantly, you're not confused. You're awakening. And once that process starts, it doesn't stop. Which means what you're feeling right now is just the beginning. What you're experiencing right now is not random. It's not confusion. It's not burnout. And it's definitely not you losing control. It's an internal upgrade. Something inside you is evolving, quietly but powerfully. Your mind is no longer satisfied with surface-level living. Small talk feels exhausting. Fake energy feels unbearable. And living on autopilot, that feels impossible now. You've started to notice a shift in your thinking. You question everything, not in a negative way, but in a deeper, more aware way. Why do people behave the way they do? Why does society push certain paths? Why does so much of life feel unexamined? And at the same time, you've started seeking meaning over comfort. You don't just want to exist anymore. You want to understand. You want depth. You want something real. And maybe for the first time, you're choosing truth over approval. Even if it makes you uncomfortable. Even if it makes others misunderstand you. Even if it makes you feel alone. Because pretending doesn't feel like an option anymore. But here's where it gets intense. All of this It creates chaos inside you. Because while this new version of you is rising, your old identity is slowly breaking apart. The version of you that used to fit in, that used to go along with everything, that used to avoid questioning things. That version is fading. And it doesn't go quietly. It resists. It creates doubt. It creates fear. It tries to pull you back into what feels familiar. That's why you feel unstable sometimes. That's why your emotions feel heavier than usual. You're not just thinking differently. You're becoming someone new. And here's the truth nobody tells you. Growth doesn't feel like happiness in the beginning. It doesn't feel peaceful. It doesn't feel clear. It feels like loss. Losing people you once connected with. Losing interest in things that once defined you. Losing clarity about where you're going. It feels like everything that once made sense is slowly slipping away. And that can be scary, because humans crave certainty. We want to know what's next. We want to feel in control. But growth removes that illusion. It forces you into the unknown. And in that space, it feels like you're losing yourself. But listen carefully. You're not breaking down. You're not becoming empty. You're not disappearing. You're shedding. Layer by layer, belief by belief, identity by identity. You're letting go of everything that was never truly you. And that process, it's uncomfortable, it's messy, it's emotional, but it's necessary, because you can't become who you're meant to be while holding on to who you were never supposed to stay. Most people reach this stage, and then they go back, not forward, not deeper. Back to what feels safe, back to what feels familiar, back to the version of life they already know, even if it doesn't fulfill them. And the scary part? They don't even realize they're doing it. They distract themselves. More scrolling, more noise, more things to avoid sitting alone with their thoughts. Because silence forces you to face what's real. So they fill that silence. They numb the feeling through entertainment, through comfort, through habits that keep them busy, but never growing. And slowly, that awareness they once felt, it fades. Not because it disappeared, but because they chose to ignore it. Why? Because change is uncomfortable. It challenges everything you thought you knew. It forces you to step into uncertainty. It asks you to let go of what feels secure for something unknown. And most people aren't ready for that. So they choose the easier path. They choose comfort, and staying the same, that's always easier. No risk, no confusion, no uncomfortable questions. But there's a hidden cost. Because if you ignore this shift, you don't go back to peace. You go into stagnation. You feel stuck, not for a few days, not for a few weeks, but for years. Waking up every day with the same quiet dissatisfaction, feeling like something is missing, but never knowing exactly what. Living a life that looks fine on the outside, but feels empty on the inside. And that's the real danger. Not failure, not change, but staying in a life that no longer feels aligned just because it's comfortable. And that quiet voice inside you, the one you've been hearing, it doesn't disappear. You can ignore it. You can silence it temporarily. You can distract yourself from it. But it will always come back, stronger, clearer, more persistent. It will show up in moments when you're alone. It will whisper when everything around you is quiet. It will remind you, this isn't who you're meant to be. And over time, that whisper turns into pressure. That pressure turns into frustration. And that frustration, it turns into regret. Because deep down, you'll know. You had a moment, a a chance to listen, a chance to change, a chance to step into something more real, and you ignored it. So now you're standing at a decision point, right here, right now. You either listen to that voice, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it feels uncertain, or you silence it and slowly become someone you were never meant to be. There is no neutral choice, because not choosing growth is choosing to stay stuck. And one day, you'll look back at this moment and realize this was the point where everything could have changed. So what is actually happening to you? After all the confusion, the overthinking, the emotional ups and downs, what does it all mean? Here it is, simple but powerful. You're becoming aware of your true self, not the version shaped by society, not the version trained to fit in, not the version that seeks validation, approval, or acceptance, but the real version of you, the one that sees clearly, the one that questions instead of blindly following, the one that feels deeply instead of pretending, the one that recognizes truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And once you reach this point, there's no going back, because awareness changes everything. Once you see through fake conversations, you can't enjoy them the same way again. Once you recognize empty routines, you can't keep repeating them without questioning. Once you understand your own depth, you can't shrink yourself to fit into shallow spaces. That's why everything feels different. That's why people feel distant. Not because you're better than them, but because you're seeing things from a different level now. A level where surface level living no longer satisfies you. And that creates a gap between who you were and who you're becoming. A gap between the life you had and the life you're starting to imagine. And in that gap, everything feels uncertain, but it's also where transformation happens. Because your old life, it was built on patterns you never questioned, expectations you never chose, beliefs you never examined, and now you're seeing all of it clearly. That's why your old life feels small, not in a judgmental way, but in a limiting way. Like you've outgrown a version of reality that once defined you. And now you're standing at the edge of something bigger, something deeper, something more real. This isn't confusion. This isn't loss. This is expansion. You're evolving, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And evolution always feels uncomfortable in the beginning, because you're stepping into a version of yourself you've never met before. But make no mistake, this is the moment everything starts to make sense. This is the moment the chaos turns into clarity. This is the moment you realize nothing was wrong with you. You were just waking up. Listen carefully, not casually, not while scrolling. Really listen. Because what I'm about to say, most people hear, but very few actually understand. You're not lost. You're transforming. You're not alone. You're just ahead. You're not broken. You're breaking illusions. Pause. Read that again. Slowly this time. Let it sink in. Because this part, this exact realization, is where everything starts to shift. Most people never reach this level of awareness, and even if they do, they don't stay long enough to understand it. They run from it. They label it as confusion. They call it overthinking. They try to fix it instead of listening to it. But you didn't skip this. You stayed. And that matters. Because the pain you feel right now, it's not random. It's not punishment, and it's definitely not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's transition. It's the space between who you used to be and who you're becoming. And that space, It's uncomfortable. It feels uncertain. It feels heavy. Sometimes it even feels lonely. But that's only because you're in between versions of yourself. You've outgrown your old mindset, but haven't fully stepped into your new one yet. So of course it feels confusing. You're not standing on solid ground. You're crossing a bridge. And bridges aren't meant to be comfortable. They're meant to take you somewhere new. So don't panic in this phase. Don't rush it. Don't try to escape it. Because this moment, this exact feeling you're experiencing right now is proof. Proof that you're changing. Proof that you're growing. Proof that you're becoming something more than you were before. And one day, you'll look back at this phase and realize this wasn't the moment you were falling apart. This was the moment you started becoming yourself. So what do you do now? After everything you've felt, everything you've realized, what's next? You don't fight it. You don't suppress it. And most importantly, you don't go back. You follow it. Even if it feels uncertain, even if it doesn't make sense yet, even if no one around you understands it. Because this shift, it's leading you somewhere. So start paying attention. Pay attention to what drains you. The people, habits, and environments that leave you feeling empty. Pay attention to what energizes you. The moments where you feel alive, present, real. And most importantly, pay attention to what feels true, not what's popular, not what's expected, but what genuinely feels right to you. Because that is your direction. You don't need to have everything figured out right now. You just need to be aware enough to take the next step. And if this message resonated with you, if you felt like this video was speaking directly to you, then understand this. This is just the beginning. There's a deeper phase of this transformation, a stage where things become even more intense, more clear, and more powerful. But most people never reach it because they stop too early. They turn back. But you might be different. So if you're ready to go deeper, subscribe, because in the next video, I'm going to show you what happens after this stage and how to navigate it without losing yourself. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. You're not going crazy. You're waking up. And once you wake up, there's no going back.